So now you get into the US deals with other countries. If you squint here, this is where you can see some hope for how this whole thing works itself out down the road. The bombings and the social media threats are not the actual path out of this. Um, that can't bring a new stable framework, right? Just more war is not going to be good for markets. I didn't pull a quote here, but that book I keep referencing, I read it earlier this year, Gold and Iron by Fritz Stern, about the buildup of the Prussian Empire. One of the things you notice, the book, as I've highlighted, focuses on two characters, Otto von Bismarck and his private banker, Gerson von Bleichreuter. Um, Bleichreuter was involved in mainly sovereign debt capital markets. And one of the things that comes across there is war is bad for yields. When you when you see war break out or tension simmer between any two bilateral parties or groups of parties, yields sell off. Um,
Yeah.
IOUs do not like conflict. Um, so that's it. That to bring that into the fold where we started from, the sovereign debt sell off. The debt is selling off because it doesn't like the developments it's seeing on the war front, if you will, or the collision that's underway.
Right.
The way out of this is actually economic cooperation. So you need to look at the business development front in global energy markets, themselves for that. It's insanely complex. Um, and all of these bespoke relationships between the producer regions and the consumption regions, like I compare it, like I call it an open heart surgery, as we're rewiring literally all of those relationships um, to connect supply and demand together. It's a complicated process, like it truly is rocket surgery. We'll see how it all works out, but if you squint you can see some early shoots of what that new world might look like. One example is the headlines that came out of Iraq this week, signing 48 deals with U.S. companies worth $60 billion for energy infrastructure, pipelines, et cetera, that would provide the backbone for how future trade and energy flows will connect the consumption markets with the production from the Middle East. Um, think about this in Iraq, and then all of these pipelines, and then where they ultimately connect. That's just one interconnected node in a much broader global energy market patchwork. Like, think about Venezuela as a production source. We won't talk about it anymore
Yeah.
today, but a lot going on in Venezuela, both with its energy production and getting a hold of investment it needs, the debt workout situation. That's probably a 2027 story, not something to be resolved in the second half of 2026. But with these pipelines that were just signed, these are MOUs. You can see the gravity, pulling in a certain direction with an intent to set up the energy flows north to go north and westward over land and water, as opposed to going south and east by way of the Red Sea or Strait of Hormuz, right? So
Right around those bottlenecks.
yeah, exactly. So you can see this this direction taking shape. Notice here the companies called out: ExxonMobil, KBR, GE Vernova, Shell, Halliburton, large Western energy majors, industrials, etc. And then also Syria involved with cooperation to reconstruct the long defunct Iraq Syria pipeline, which after 20 years, 30 years of war in the region, the rebuild is underway. You tear it down so you can build it back up, essentially. All right, and then finally, like to shift our focus, like another area of the globe, spin the globe. If you don't have one, go buy one. On the sides of the ASEAN summit this past week, we saw an announcement from the Quad, which is U.S. and then Australia, Japan, and India, as kind of the regional um, I guess powers, who were kind of forming an antipode to mainland China and its desire to expand its economic sphere, both eastward, which is blocked off by the sea and the island chains, and then westward by, the land, which is hard to conquer and maintain economic sovereignty over. The further you expand your supply chains, et cetera. But you saw this statement, which was kind of milk toast, but was quietly saying, um, saying the quiet part out loud, right? So you see the call here. If you read it on the right, the takeaway here, it's not saying much, but it's also saying everything. If you read between the lines, equating peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region through security and prosperity. So security implies defense, prosperity implies economic growth. You see the underpinning of everything we've talked about earlier in the show, kind of lying there latently below the water line, to like the deeper part of the mass of the iceberg. On top of that, you saw Marco Rubio meet with Chinese officials on the outskirts of the ASEAN summit, which is a lead up to the scheduled visit for Xi Jinping and his contingency to arrive in Washington, which is tentatively scheduled on the calendar for September. I believe that date is still penciled in. Could get delayed. Any little skirmish could kick the can down the road. But that's what we talked about. The second half is absolutely loaded with deadlines, forcing functions. It is truly packed. But for now, the thing right in front of us is it looks like we're just going to have to brace for and weather that punch in the face that we know is incoming for long-term sovereign debt markets. And then we just take it one step at a time from there.